Hello, everybody. Welcome. If you
Hello.
you have made it to the second discussion of our book Great Books Club. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Just as a reminder, we are recording these sessions so that they can live forever on our Pep Learn website. So we are recording tonight again. So welcome, everybody. My name is Chad Quinones. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement for Seaver College at Pepperdine, and I'm so glad that you all are here with us. Um, Tonight, I'm excited that my colleague Lisette Isiodoria is here tonight. She is helping. She might send a few of you some private messages here and there, so be sure to check your chat. Um, and throughout the event, please, if you have any questions, put them right there in the chat. Lisette and I are both going to be watching that for Dr. Contino so that he can pay attention to what you all are saying and what you all need to hear. But without further ado, I want to turn it over to Paul. And thank you again, Paul, for everything you're doing for us, your collaboration. We're so excited to have you do this with us and to have you collaborate with the Seaver Alumni Relations Office. So thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Lizette. And thanks, everybody, for being here. I see many former students, Anemone, Autumn, Alex, Rachel, Ty's a fellow teacher, Miranda, and some people who have been here before, Sam and Catherine, who'll be reading for us. Is Megan McComb here? Just unmute yourself, Megan, and tell us you're here if you are.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yay, there you are. So good to see you again. Okay, good. She's one of our readers, and I'll mention that there'll be a few more, but what I usually do before class is say a prayer. So let's see, if I go like that, you'll see that the opening prayer is going to be, well, it's appropriate for Ash Wednesday. You can see the ashes. It's the beginning of Lent. In a lot of ways, basically, the Lenten journey is like the Purgatorial journey. Okay. I suspect that most of you in the audience, among us today aren't Catholic, but many of you are kind of cognizant that it's Lent and, that will bring a different kind of spirit. So I'm going to begin with Psalm 51, at least part of it. And this is a psalm that they're singing in Purgatory 5. Annabella will be reading some of that. Are you there, Annabella? Unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Of course you are. Hello. So let us begin then with prayer. I'm using the NRSV. If you wish to open your Bibles as well. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your steadfast love. According to your abundant mercy, blot out my transgressions, wash me thoroughly from my iniquity, cleanse me from my sin. For I know my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me. Against you, you alone have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight, so that you are justified in your sentence and blameless when you pass judgment. Indeed, I was born guilty, a sinner when my mother conceived me. You desire truth in the inward being, therefore teach me wisdom in my secret heart. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones that you have crushed rejoice. Hide your face from my sins. Blot out my iniquities. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and put a new and right spirit within me. Do not cast me away from your presence. Do not take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to all of us the joy of your salvation. Sustain in all of us a willing spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so the plan for the evening will go like this. Let me say a couple of words. It's just such a nice coincidence that happens to be Ash Wednesday. I got to say something about that. So let me do that right now. I jotted a few things. I think to understand purgatory, it's very helpful to reflect about the meaning of Lent, this 40-day period 40 days, mirroring Christ's 40 days in the desert in which he fasted. It's a time of fasting, of almsgiving, and of penance. The cross in ashes. Sometimes when you receive the cross, dust you are, to dust you shall return. It's a reminder of mortality, but it's also a reminder of our fallibility, our capacity to turn away from God, to sin, and our desire through prayer to realign ourselves with God's will. And partly that comes through sacrifice, penance, giving something up, whatever it may be. And of course, doing things too, acting with charity. And I think you see all these things in Purgatory, especially the 7 terraces, where I hope we can spend most of our time. Purgatory proper, that is where people are cleaning themselves of those 7 deadly sins of pride and envy and wrath, sloth, or acedia, a kind of failure to love with vigor, avarice, gluttony, and lust. So you see I'm going to show you images very quickly just to review a little bit and to preview Purgatory, especially for those of you here for the first time. But I'm going to ask you, sort of like in class, to reflect on a question that I sent out to you and to write via chat. This is experimental, okay? I didn't even do this during COVID, okay? So let's see how it works. And I didn't have, how many people do we have on here, Chad? 75? So I had like 14. So it's going to be, but what I'm going to do is take that and somehow organize it so that we can respond to the relevance of reflecting on the 7 deadly sins. Maybe we won't get through it all. That's okay. The assignment took us up through Purgatory 27. Luckily, we have 2 more sessions after this. But we still have to finish the Inferno. And Sam Perrin is kindly going to read the part of Ulysses. I'm going to say a word about Guido, who comes after that, because he kind of matches with Buonconte, who comes in Canto 5 of Purgatory. Catherine Illingworth is going to read Ugolino. And then there's not much to say about frozen mechanical Satan, but we'll say what we have to say. And then we greet the stars and the sunny climes of Purgatory. And I'll say a few quick words about anti-purgatory. Megan and Annabella will read a little bit. And then we'll address the question many of you might be asking, what's the point of purgatory? Where did this even come from doctrinally? And what's the purpose of this place? And then this is the part because I like conversation, your response to the question that I'll be giving you in just a moment. But let me go through the images first as a way of reviewing and maybe capturing your, not only your memory, but the way in which you might answer the question that I'll be posing. My thesis is that at the heart of Dante's Divine Comedy is a vision of love. If you look at the very middle of the Commedia, Purgatory 17 is about love. That's the center of the whole 3-part poem. Somebody once counted the words apparently, and the middle word is love. Okay, so my goal then is to have you think of love. I think Dante is very Augustinian in his desire to tell us about his pilgrim life in order to not only edify, but also please his fellow pilgrims with the beauty of his poetry. So when we hit on passages that are especially beautiful, I'd like to note those. I mentioned the recent popes all love Dante. Enough said. There's himself presenting his book. He wasn't a keen fan of Boniface. I'm going to skip through this quickly. Europe is divided. Italy is divided. And you are probably perhaps pained to read some of these long invectives against Italy, torn apart, and against emperors who weren't bringing unity to Europe. That's the way it stood in Dante's time. And he has great political concerns looking toward the possible unity, not only of Italy, but of Europe. He went in exile in 1302. He stayed in Verona. He stayed in Ravenna. He wants us to read it like the Bible, literally, but also allegorically, morally, anagogically. So when we hear Psalm 114, as we will very soon, I think Megan will be reading that part. When Israel went out of Egypt, the house of Jacob, from a people of strange language, the Israelites were freed literally. We're freed by Christ. We look to the eternal Jerusalem for our complete freedom in heaven. Dante's on the cusp of the Renaissance in the Purgatorio. There's still a lot of classical references, a lot of Ovid references you probably saw. This is Egyptian gold for him. This is the way he decorates the ark. That is the poem he writes in Terza Rima. And we talked a little bit about his meeting of Beatrice. We'll see her more vividly when we turn to those cantos in March. He's lost in a dark wood. He's met by three beasts. He must descend before he can ascend. And we saw much of hell last time. We know his vision of the cosmos is such that Jerusalem is on one end and purgatory is on the other. And we know that three blessed ladies have set Virgil on this journey. We'll come back to this scene where they're crossing the Acheron and they're cursing and blaspheming. In fact, maybe I'll just say it right now so we don't have to turn back. Do you want to say willingly, they're choosing their damnation. The way the text is read, and in other translations, they detach themselves like leaves from an autumn tree, and they're eager to take this new condition of damnation. C.S. Lewis imagines the possibility of turning back. I highly recommend The Great Divorce. Sayers calls it the drama of the soul's choice, and we had some debate last time. Is there any way out of hell? Is there hope for Virgil? We may come back to that question. Here he is among the pagan poets in limbo. Christ, of course, released people from limbo. Most prominently, the Hebrew patriarchs and matriarchs. We met Francesca, blown by the wind with her lover Paolo. We met Farinata and Cavalcante in the same cell, but egotistically divorced from each other, not acknowledging each other. We met Pierre, who commits suicide and is turned into a dead wood. We met Brunetto, Dante's old teacher. And I think that's where we left off. Where we'll begin very soon is with Ulysses in A Tongue of Flame, who speaks to Dante, actually speaks to Virgil. Virgil is the one who communicates because Virgil knows the noble tongue that Ulysses will respond to. And we know about his crazy journey, just so you can see this geographically. He's going to attempt to go, now it's reversed, to go to the southern hemisphere. If you look at the southern hemisphere, he goes past the rocks of Gibraltar, all the way toward Mount Purgatory. 5 months they travel, but the ship sinks. We then meet Ugolino, a horrifying story of a man nailed in prison with 5 children dying before him. And that is when we will soon leave Inferno, the three-headed mechanical Satan, and find our way to the stars and to Mount Purgatory. So there's anti-purgatory, A-N-T-E, people who delayed their conversion or their repentance, people who are distracted or procrastinated, have to wait a while. But then there are 7 levels that represent the 7 deadly sins, which become part of the Christian tradition early on. And we'll see if the text shows this, that, again, the question with Ugolino and Ulysses, is this a portrait of a very memorable personage, but who is in hell because he's isolated, he's not repentant, he's in a kind of bondage, he is in a kind of rebellion, a kind of despair. Let's see if the text actually reveals that to us. In purgatory, everything is hopeful. He is girded with a reed. His face is washed off. And this is the scene that Megan will read when the souls come to purgatory. They're singing when Israel came out of Egypt. What do these steps represent? Well, when we get to Canto 9 will go over these 3 steps that are the entrance to purgatory proper, and the way in which the penance for each deadly sin is accompanied by a contemplation of a virtue of which Mary is always the first example, but there are others. We also have examples of vices, but for each of the 7 deadly sins, Mary becomes the image of the key virtue. This is the 7 stories. I'm about to ask you, which of these sins most intrigues you in your reading? Which of them did you have a question about? Which of them seemed to you to speak most to our contemporary condition, or to perhaps your own journey in Lent, without getting too personal? We're going to hear a great speech. This is actually the one that Megan is going to read. Bonnie's going to read the beginning of Purgatory 2, but this is Statius, who tells us about the earthquake, and again, meditating on the virtue that counters the vice. In the Terrace of Gluttony, we're going to talk about the cross of Christ, the way it bears fruit. And finally, we will meet the souls in the flames who embrace each other. And this is Canto 27. At the end of this, Virgil says, I crown and mitre you over yourself. You're now Lord. Spoiler alert, it ain't over yet. He's going to meet Beatrice, and he's going to have some explaining to do. But we'll get to that next month. I'm stopping the share. And now I want you to get your fingers warmed up. Okay, there you all are. I like this better. I can see you now. And I want you to try this, okay? It's an experiment, but you have a keyboard, right? Most of you, some of you are on an iPhone. Maybe it's hard. You can do the thummy thing. If you did the reading and one terrace especially spoke to you, I want you to think about that terrace and open up your book. And maybe if you could refer to a particular canto, even a line. The question that I gave you was, which of the 7 terraces of purgatory did you find most interesting, perhaps most relevant to your own experience? And then, when we get to that particular terrace, we'll look at particular aspects of it. We meet people there. They're doing a particular penance. They're all looking into the counter virtue and trying to practice that virtue. And I'm wondering how that speaks to your own experience, perhaps in ordinary life, or perhaps to our own contemporary situation writ large. When Marco Lombardo talks about free will and sin, and Matt will read that for us, he points to individual sin and social sin. It's kind of easier to point to social sin than individual sin, especially on Zoom in front of 100 people. But okay, you understand what you're doing? I'm going to do it with you. I'm going to do what I do in class. I'm going to start writing, except I'm going to write in longhand because I'll mess everything up if I start playing with the keyboard. Pick a sin, any deadly sin, and write about it. And then look at your text and refer to some passage where that sin is being described and ask a question or make an observation, okay? I'm going to take 5 minutes. Let's go. Sometimes I say to my students, free write. If you can feel yourself doing that on the keyboard, do it. Because I just want to see where people's interests lie in these particular sins and virtues. And as soon as you feel confident, or if you feel confident to press send or whatever you do on a chat box to make it show up, press that button. We got 3 more minutes. Okay, 1 more minute, and then make a decision whether you want to press send or not. But I'm already reading some. Oh, hi, Jerry Grimm. I'm not sure what that means, but yeah, keep them coming. In 1 minute, I'm going to grab all these, cut and paste them on a document, and make sense of them somehow. And I'm looking forward to the challenge. I love what I'm seeing so far. It's really, really good. Okay, dot the last I, cross the last T, and now make that completely free will decision whether you're going to press send or not. I'm printing the ones I have. They're terrific. And I appreciate you noting the canto that you want us to look at. So keep them coming.
Paul, if you'd like, I put them all in a document in your chat.
Oh, you did? You put them in it? You put them in the chat already? Okay, good.
Yeah, if you just click that link, you can open that document.
Okay. There you are. Okay, now you put the whole thing in there in the chat. Where's the doc then? Where would that be? Let's see. Okay, good. All right. If there's more, that's fine. We can get them later. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, but at least we do have these. I'm grateful for these. Thanks so much. All right. Okay, let's get started then. Megan has brought us to Ugolino, and I want to remind you all that we're I won't grab these yet. We've got to talk about Inferno before we get to Purgatorio. So with no further ado, let's go to Ulysses, okay? And the question I want you to ask yourself as you're hearing Sam Perrin read this, I'll play the part of Virgil and the narrator. Does this guy not stand as an image of the academic life, of the nobility of being a human being who, as Aristotle says, desires to know? Or more simply, why is this guy in hell? You know, what's going on? Sam, give me a shout out. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Paul,
All right,
what
good.
page are we reading on?
I'm sorry?
What page are we on?
We are on page 116. Make that 115. I want to point a couple of things out as you get to Canto 26. He's really interested to see what these lights are up ahead. And in line 19, it grieved me then, it grieves me now once more to fix my thoughts on what I witnessed there. Now, more than usual, I must hold mind back, lest brain should speed where virtue does not guide. Notice the way he's saying, my brain can't go beyond what is virtuous. And the poet himself is saying, as he once said to himself then, I got to hold myself back. Okay, so he continues on. He's clutching onto a rock on line 43 on the next page. The leader, Virgil, points out to him that in the flame are Ulysses and Diomedes, and they're both Greek. So he says, let me do the talking, okay? And I will pick up the narration, Sam, on line 85. What I'm going to ask you guys to do you have pens? If you have a pen or a pencil handy, mark your text. I tell my students to do this. Did you notice something on this reading that you hadn't noticed before that might help to answer those questions? Okay, the greater of those horns of ancient flame began to tear and waver, murmuring as fires will do when struggling with a wind. Drawing its pinnacle this way and that, as though this truly were a tongue that spoke, it flung its utterance out, declaring,
once I'd set my course from Circe. She had kept me near Gaeta for a year or more before Aeneas, passing, named it that. No tenderness for son, no duty owed to aging fatherhood, no love that should have brought my wife Penelope delight, could overcome in me my long desire, burning to understand how this world works and know of human vices, worth, and valor. Out then, across the open depths, I put to sea a single prow, and with me all my friends, the little crew that had not yet abandoned me. I saw both shorelines. One ran on to Spain, the other to Morocco, Sardinia, and all those islands that our ocean bathes. I and my company were old and slow, and yet, arriving at that narrow sound where Hercules had once set up his mark to warn that men should never pass beyond, I left Seville behind me on the right. To port already I had left Ceuta. Brothers, I said, 100,000 perils you have passed and reached the Occident. For us, so little time remains to keep the vigil of our living sense. Do not deny your will to win experience behind the sun of worlds where no man dwells. Hold clear in thought your seed and origin. You were not made to live as mindless brutes, but go in search of virtue and true knowledge. My men, attending to this little speech, I made so keen to take the onward way that even I could hardly have restrained them. Wheeling our stern against the morning sun, we made our oars our wings in crazy flight, then on and always leftward, making gain. Now every star around the alien pole I saw by night. Our own star sank so low it never rose above the ocean floor. 5 times the light that shines beneath the moon had flared anew, and 5 times too grown dim, since we had set our course on that high venture. Ahead of us, a mountain now appeared, darkened through distance, soaring, to my eyes, higher by far than any ever seen. We cheered for joy. This quickly turned to tears, for now a wind was born from that new land. Twisting, it struck at our forward timbers. The waves and keel 3 times it swirled around, and then a 4th. The afterdeck rose up, the prow went down, as pleased another's will, until once more the sea closed over us.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sam. So, Sam, I'm going to play Ulysses' advocate. This seems to me a guy who not only wants to know, but has this capacity to inspire others to seek knowledge. He points out time is short, and these guys are older. Don't deny your will to win experience. You're made not to live as a mindless brute. I mean, this is right out of Aristotle and Plato, right out of Imago Dei theology. You're made with rationality, with freedom, and thus you're capable to go in search of virtue and true knowledge. What in the world is wrong with Ulysses?
Well, he's in the circle with the counselors of fraud. And I think we're to understand here that he's somehow defrauding his crew by taking them on this mad quest that is going to end in their ruin.
But nobody's been there before. He's not lying about that. Nobody's taken the boat all the way to Mount Purgatory. This is what intrepid navigators do, isn't it?
Maybe so, but maybe all the intrepid navigators are counselors of fraud. Who knows?
Oh, okay. There goes Magellan. Okay, now he reminds me. Okay, okay. Ty DeLong has something to say. So Ty, I just happened to see your name pop up. Turn your mic on. If I call your name, that means turn your mic on. Who does he remind you of, and why?
Yeah, I have a student who's just started reading Frankenstein and reading the first letter, the epistolary part of the novel by Robert Walton, who's a sea captain who's searching for the North Pole. He is basically leading his men to their death. And so I feel like there's a bit of an echo in that particular thing. And of course, that's a major theme of the novel as well. There are some things we are not meant to know, whether it's, how to like reanimate a corpse or go to places that are just too difficult to get to.
Okay.
This is not something we're supposed to do.
Okay, that's really well said. And I think I don't want to belabor it. I'm going to play Ugolino's advocate in a minute, Catherine, so be prepared. Clearly, there's something amiss. The Pillars of Hercules marked a limit. Do we face limits in science now? As far as I know, no one has cloned a human being. There are novels about it, notably Ichiguro's Never Let Me Go. People clone for their body parts, for transfusions, for implants, etc. What about AI? Are people going to a point where they're going to transgress? I mean, the fear of the singularity, where the computers all finally resist the human will. Can a computer have agency? Ishiguro writes about this in Clara and the Sun as well. So there might be something like forbidden knowledge. We think of the mid-20th century, Oppenheimer, I'm a destroyer, creator of worlds, when the bomb goes off. But what about the way he goes about this? Is there anything in his character that is a warning sign that troubles you? Yeah, please, John. John Ruff. One more click, John. Get that off. Get that microphone on.
Okay. I think we all heard the text say that he's decided to leave his wife and his children behind, and not only that, but he's led all his men to do the same thing. That should count for something.
That should count for something, good or bad.
Well, I would say that he has obligations
And
that he's neglecting.
Yeah. And I think this is where, we might feel unsettled. Now, again, if I was going to continue to be his advocate, he has obligations to his, notice they're old men. He calls them brothers, he gives them a pep talk. But even there, look at what he says. My men attending to this little speech, I made so keen to take the onward way. Leaders can be manipulative. Leaders can use people to their own ends. And let me hearken to Augustine again. Augustine says there's three lusts. There's the lust, the obvious one, lust of the flesh. There's the lust for domination. We could see that here. And then there's the lust of the eye, which is out of curiosity. And so one is going to be inherently kind of curious when somebody says, well, don't go there, don't look at that. And his desire to know, arguably, is self-centered rather than centered on the larger community, or in a way that looks at the larger community and wants to be of benefit to them. He also does it with no guide. Dante has a guide who he's calling, by the end of Inferno, beginning of Purgatory, his dear father. There's a bond there that's true and real, whereas here he's going alone without a guide, and it's a crazy flight, and he's going left, which is in Italian is sinistra. There's other things we could say. Just raise your hand if you have anything else that you want to say about Ulysses. Catherine, you're my go-to for some of these things. Anything that you would add?
I think that, yes, there are sort of, in general, things that one shouldn't dare to do, but I think there's a very strict category of why this particular trespass is important. And it's because Purgatory is the land of the saved, and salvation cannot be achieved.
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah. So he's really presuming here, because he's not just exploring some new land. He's exploring forbidden land, because this is for a very particular group of people.
Yes, and Dante's journey to the afterworld is initiated by Mary herself. He was summoned there by heaven, and that is not the case for Ulysses.
That is not the case for Ulysses. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to, believe it or not, I'm printing, but now I'm looking again. Any other last words on Ulysses? He's a complicated case. Tennyson thought he was a hero. He wrote a poem about it. This is what the human person and all his glory is capable of. But did I see Andy? Jack. Okay, Jack's got something, and Kobe's got something. Then we're going to go to you. Then we're going to move on. Jack and Kobe.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick. This is the Bolgia for the evil counselors, and Odysseus is kind of the quintessential evil counselor.
Yeah,
because he, I mean, he's always connected to Athena. In the Odyssey, she's always very close to him, and in the Iliad. And then if you look beyond just the Homeric literature, there's the story about him. He was the one who came up with the Trojan horse plan.
Right.
And he was the one who, which is, this kind of is odd because it's about Athena, but he stole the statue of Athena from Troy so that they could take it down. And these were means of defeating Troy, who, I mean, from Homer's perspective, Troy were kind of the good guys. Hector is kind of a noble hero, and he was very honored for that in the Middle Ages. But Troy couldn't be defeated through just brute force. It couldn't be defeated by Achilles. It had to be defeated by Odysseus, who was conniving.
Good. That's very good. Thank you. And now Kobe.
Yeah, Paul, really the only thing, you kind of brought us to Tennyson already. That was the main comparison that I was going to make. And it's like, I think in Tennyson's poem, he does obviously see as a hero, and it's quite inspiring at the end, right? It's not too late to seek a newer world. And yet there is also kind of a like faded sadness there, I feel like, when I read that poem that he brings out, right? Where, especially when he's talking about like, oh, is it for me to be like matched with an aged wife? And like, and he's comparing himself to Telemachus, and he has his work and I mine. And so he's like, oh, I'm meant to keep moving. Right. And there's this line that always sticks with me that I feel like brings out the curiosity piece you were talking about, right? Where Tennyson says, all experience is an arch where through that untraveled world whose margin fades forever and ever when I move. Right. So there's this thing out there that keeps moving away from me that I keep chasing after.
Yeah.
Right. And I think like, and that's, I think, kind of a foil to bring up Augustine again.
That's great. I'm glad. It's been a long time since I read that poem. And those words remind me of Augustine's words. Our hearts are restless until they rest in you. What's the solution? More restless searching. That in Dante is the turn away, the twisting away of God. That's perversio. The turning toward is conversio. We don't see that. All we have is a reference to another who wants the boat to sink. Now, very quickly, I'm going to go to Canto 27, because Guido, you got to feel sorry for the guy. He's a political player. He's been the advisor to Frederick II, and he says enough is enough. I'm going to become a Franciscan friar. How virtuous. I don't know if you remember this. It may have been a while, but if you go to page 122, it says that once a great warlord, I became a friar, believing, bound by the cord, I'll make amends, and my beliefs would all have been assured had not there been, he'll rot, that sovereign priest who won me firmly back to former sins. It goes like this. Boniface the Pope, who's a political player, comes to him and says, how can I defeat these Romans who are against me? And he goes, man, I'm a friar. That's not my deal anymore. He says, come on, I'll give you absolution in advance, even if you give me, it's like a mafiosi thing, where they're talking to each other. And he says, I want the best counsel you can give me so I can betray these people. And I know it's a sin, but I'll absolve you in advance. And then there's this, it's not comical, it's very sad. He's being damned, but it's sort of comical. And I'll do a comical voice as I read it, if you don't mind. It's on page 125. And actually, Annabella, get on cue, because I'm going to actually jump to Purgatory quickly to just highlight the comparison. As soon as he does this, on line 112, he dies. And he's a friar, and he's actually dying in Assisi. Who comes for him but St. Francis? But then a black alumnus of the cherubim cried out, don't cheat. You can't dispose of him. Down must he come to join my squalid thralls. His sound advice was after all deceitful, and since that hour I've hovered around his hair. Repentance fails? There can't be absolution nor penitence when willing ill goes on. That is, by contradiction, impossible. Maybe you didn't know the devil was a logician. And he drags his soul to hell. Okay, that's the end of poor Guido. Now, his son, arguably, was warlike from beginning to end. So flip ahead to Canto 5 of Purgatory, where we meet on page 180, Buonconte. And Buonconte is the son of Guido, and he's been shedding blood pretty much all his life. But Annabella will read his story, and I'd like to hear your response. He was killed in the Battle of Campaldino in 1289. Dante fought in that battle, and I'll be the narrator, Annabella. Let's see. Pick it up. Just pick it up on line 85. May your desires be met.
May your desires be met that draw you to the mountain height. Then please take pity. In your goodness, aid my own. I am, once Montefeltrin, now Buonconte. Giovanna does not pray for me. None cares. And so among all these I walk, brow lowered.
No one has ever known, I said, Dante, your place of burial. What led you? Chance? Or was it force away at Campaldino from the kill?
Ah, a stream, the Arciano, runs across the lower Casentino hills, born above Hermitage and Apennine. I'd got to where this river's tidal fails, fleeing on foot, and, wounded in my throat, a line of blood behind me on the plain. And now I lost my sight, and all my words ended in uttering Maria's name. I fell, my flesh alone remaining there. But tell the living this, I'll speak the truth. God's angel laid his hands on me. Hell shrieked.
Okay, now use your devil voice. Now you got to use your devil voice.
Why do you rob me, heaven spawn, of this? You'd prize him from me for one little tear, and carry off his everlasting part. Well, I'll rule otherwise the other half. Humid evaporations, as you know, collect in air, then, rising to the grip of freezing air, return to earth as rain.
Okay, so that's good. Perfect, Annabelle, because the rest is just the weather. The devil zaps the weather. It gets really rainy like it's been in Malibu, and he gets taken down the river and his body is lost, and that answers the question. But here's a guy who's got blood on his hands, and he says a Hail Mary. It's the ultimate Hail Mary pass. Is anybody troubled? If you're troubled, raise your hand. Dad becomes a Franciscan. Who knows? I don't know how many years, a good number of years. And the Pope comes to him. How do you say no to the Pope? Okay, who's troubled? Do I see a hand anywhere? when you raise your hand, it tells me immediately, and I call on you, you see. Nobody's troubled by this. You see, you're all aligned with God's justice. You know that if at the end you say a prayer and it's sincere, your deathbed confession, your little Hail Mary will bring you, well, look, he's got some time in anti-purgatory, right? He died violently. He's got to wait in the waiting room for a while. But everybody in purgatory goes to heaven. So nobody's troubled. Everybody's aligned with this. We had quite a detour in my class the other day when people were like, what's up with Mary? Should we get into Mary or shall we defer Mary for another conversation? She's very important in this poem. She's the one, as Catherine pointed out, moved by love, who gets Lucia to get Beatrice, to get Virgil, to get Dante on his journey, on his pilgrimage. Even the very last canto of Paradiso will be a prayer to Mary, an intercessory prayer by the last guide, Bernard of Clairvaux. Anyway, anybody want to say anything? Okay, then we go to Ugolino. Enough of that, because I wanted to make that contrast between penitence and hardness of heart. And his willful giving bad counsel, treacherous counsel, and manipulating the sacrament of confession is enough to damn him. Go to page 147. Here's the scene. We're now in the icy pit, the deepest pit of hell, and soon we're going to get out of it, which I'm very glad of. Dante on line 124 sees two frozen in one single hole, one head a headpiece to the one below. As bread is mangled by some famished mouth, so too the higher gnawed the lower head, precisely where the nape and brainstem meet. Horrible. It's bestial. It's a bestial meal. Turn to Canto 33. The jaws lift from the horrible dish, and the sinner, wiping each lip clean on hair that fringed the mess he'd left the head in at its rear, began. Take it away, Catherine.
You ask that I should tell anew the pain that hopelessly, in thought alone, before I voice it, presses at my heart. And yet, if I may, by speaking, sow the fruit of hate to slur this traitor who is caught between my teeth, then words and tears you'll see will flow as one. Who you might be, I don't know, nor how you've come to be down here, but when you speak, you seem, there's little doubt, a Florentine. You need to see, I was Count Ugolino, and this is Ruggieri, the archbishop there. I'll tell you now why we two are so close. That I, in consequence of his vile thoughts, was captured, though I trusted in this man, and after I died, I do not need to say. But this cannot have carried to your ears, that is, how savagely I met my death. You'll hear it now, and know if he has injured me. One scant slit in the walls of Eagle House, because of me, they call it now the Hunger Tower, be sure though others will be locked up there, had shown me in the shaft that pierces it many new moons by now, when this bad dream tore wide the veil of what my future was. This thing here then appeared to me, this thing, as master of the hounds who tracked the wolf and his cubs as well, out on the hill where Luca hides from Pisa. In front, as leaders of the pack, he placed the clans Gualandi, Sismondi, and Lanfranchi, their bitches eating or hunting eager, lean, and smart. The chase was brief. Father and sons, it seemed, were wearying, and soon, or so it seemed, I saw those sharp fangs raking down their flanks. I woke before the day ahead had come and heard my sons, my little ones were there, cry in their sleep and call out for some food. How hard you are if, thinking what my heart foretold, you do not feel the pain of it. Whatever will you weep for, if not that? By now, they had all woken up. The time was due when, as routine, our food was brought. Yet each was doubtful, thinking of their dream. And listening, I heard the door below locked shut and then nailed in place against that dreadful tower. I looked at their dear faces and spoke no word. I did not weep. Inward I turned to stone. They wept. And then my boy Anselmo spoke, "What are you staring at? Father, what's wrong?" And so I held my tears in check and gave no answer all that day, nor all the night that followed on, until another sun came up. A little light had forced a ray into our prison, so full of pain. I now could see on all four faces my own expression. Out of sheer grief, I gnawed on both of my hands, and they, who thought I did so from an urge to eat, all on the instant rose and said, "Father, for us the pain would be less if you would choose to eat us. You, having dressed us in this wretched flesh, ought now to strip it off." So I kept still to not increase their miseries. And that day and the day beyond, we were all mute. Hard, cruel earth, why did you not gape wide? And then, as we reached the fourth of all those days, Gado pitched forward, stretching at my feet. "Help me," he said. "Why don't you help me, Dad?" And there he died. You see me here, so I saw them, the three remaining, falling one by one between the next days, 5 and 6. And then let myself, now blind, feel over them, calling on each, now we're all dead, for 2 days more. Then hunger proved a greater power than grief.
His words were done. Now, eyes askew, he grabbed once more the miserable skull, his teeth, like any dog's teeth, strong against the bone. Okay, with Dante, I'm going to hearken to some of what Dante says. I'm going to become Ugolino's advocate. He curses Pisa in the lines that come and says, "So what, as the rumor goes, that great Count Ugolino did cheat 2 fortresses from you. You had no right to crucify his children." This is a man who sees his children die before him and then dies himself. It's the most piteous tale, perhaps, in the whole, certainly the whole Inferno. Why is he in hell, Catherine?
There are a few ways to consider why he's in hell. Technically, if what is being put before the court, he's in the area with traitors here. So there's in his history, he has a history of betraying his political party. He has a history of sort of shady land dealings. He betrayed a family member of his, a grandson who was running for office. So he has some character flaws he's demonstrated in his political and administrative life. So technically, we can assume that that's why he's here, but I don't think that that matters at all, actually, about why he has been put in hell.
Why then is he there?
I think he is there because of the way that he treats his children in their moment of their greatest grief and terror of their life. And as they then, I mean, there's so much obvious Eucharistic imagery here because we're talking about eating people, I mean, these are loving bonds. You have a father and a son. There is starvation afoot, and the children are talking, they're tender, they're staring right at him. They're so concerned for their father. And what they do is they offer their own body to ease his nourishment. And what he does is instead of accepting their Christ-like offer of love and tenderness for in these final desperate moments to go down together, he sort of turns them into little Medusas. Everybody turns to stone instead.
So he turns to stone.
Right.
But doesn't he do it for their sake? So I kept still to not increase their miseries. Isn't stoical daddy doing a kind thing?
He wants us to believe that. We have seen sinners defend their actions in like this previously, but I mean, there's so many references to the Sermon of the Mount in this canto, and we're thinking, there's that verse, "What man is there among you whom his son asks for bread? Will he give him a stone instead?" And so his sons are literally desperate for bread, and he turns himself into a stone in their presence. He can't offer them bread. He could offer them his own flesh, but he doesn't even offer them a tenderness and love, and instead presents them with the stone instead.
Yes. And actually, you read it so movingly. Of course, I mean, it's horrible, but I noticed this time, you always notice something new. That day and the day beyond, we were all mute. Hard, cruel earth, why didn't you gape wide? But he's turned his own heart hard and stony. He hears a son echoing Christ. Why don't you help me, Dad? My God, why have you forsaken me? And he doesn't respond with love.
No, and
Okay, yeah,
I mean, I think, I mean, maybe I'm usurping your role as
not at all.
defendant, but it is, I mean, I think it's really important to notice that Ruggieri, the person who did this to him, is also in hell with him.
Yeah.
So God recognizes that this rage and this anger that Ugolino feels is justified because their perpetrator is damned as well, and even worse off because Ugolino at least has the chance to harm Ruggieri on the back of his head. Ruggieri
Okay,
just
so
has
now
to
I'm
take
going
it.
to complicate this a little bit more. You're exactly right, and in a sense, you know, when Dante says you had no right to crucify his children, if those of you who read Karamazov Brothers remember Ivan's plaint about why did the children have to suffer, and he's not even satisfied with eternal damnation. But that's another novel for another time. But what do you make of the fact then that Dante then a couple of pages later promises to wipe the tear from one frozen sinner's eye, and then breaks his promise and says that it was courtesy to be a swine in this case. Earlier, he pulled somebody's hair. Earlier, he kicks in the head one of the frozen souls. Is this Dante coming at the end of the Inferno and conforming himself to God's justice? Or is this Dante catching the bad vibes of hell and becoming rather hellish in his own behavior? I'm curious. I want to take a minute to see how we saw him with Filippo Argenti. I think it was Canto 8. He throws the guy off the boat and Virgil embraces him. Blessed is the womb that bore you. And the poet himself says, you know, I still to this day am glad that I saw this guy torn apart. I honestly, I'm going to confess to all of you, I don't necessarily see in Inferno moral development in Dante. Could somebody raise their hand and please?
Yes. Well,
yes.
This is John.
John, hello, John.
I've wondered if Dante had died here, would he have been damned?
I wonder. Yeah, that's a great way of putting the question. Okay, what do you guys think of that? Anybody want to respond to that? That would be the argument that he's becoming Ben Hancock. Now, here's a man who has an unsentimental view of evil. He will help us here. Is Dante conforming to God's justice here, or is he falling into infernal rage?
I think that one of the things that he's doing he's on a journey, right? So he's going through hell because wherever he was at, he was lost in the midst of this sort of dark wood in Canto 1. And I think part of what we see in his journey through hell is a recognition of his own life and his own fears of what might happen. I think part of the reason that he sees the wolf in Canto 1 and that he encounters it again in Purgatorio is because the avarice is a particularly challenging sin for him. So do I see Dante reforming over the course of the book? Yes. But right here, I would say that he's still in the process of confronting and forming a picture of his own sin.
Okay, good. Please, Catherine.
Well, I think when Dante exits hell, he is wrecked. Like the first thing we see when he gets to Purgatory is his face is covered in tears and soot. He is traumatized, and his even I tend to kind of gloss over Dante describing his own reactions to these things that he's witnessing. But like, think about what he witnesses in the schismatics, like people being hacked in half and their guts spilling out everywhere. But I mean, like
horrible,
really
horrible
traumatic stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that he's learning how to confront a level of evil that he's never seen. But I think that he is correct, that it is correct for him to treat these sinners with no mercy because that is in accordance with God's will.
But this idea of trauma, and I'm going to use this as a hinge, guys, just so we can get to purgatory, which I'm yearning to get to. He is almost clueless when they're climbing over Satan in the next canto. Satan is, in this translation, described as a great contraption whose two wings are flapping and creating all the ice. And Virgil simply tells him to, follow him. Dante is so weak, he's bereft of life and death. I neither died nor wholly stayed alive. This is more evidence for what Catherine was saying. And he sees the three faces. He sees Judas in the middle, Brutus and Cassius on the other two sides. And they climb over him and they quit by just turning around. They swivel where his head, where his shanks had been. This is line 79. And climb over him like an insensitive nothing and make their way up and out of Inferno. This is not Milton's Satan. This is a big mechanical, furry, winged, compulsive nothing. Any words, maybe Catherine, anything on that? I mean, does he do this purposely? It's an anticlimax.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it is, when we read Inferno, we like to think like, okay, what are they guilty of and why did God put them here? And there's all interesting stuff to say about contrapasso, how this is organized. But ultimately, when you watch people as you get lower and lower who have become so unhuman, they have been so transformed and misshapen by sin that they become less and less recognizable as what they were created to be by God. And so, we have even the Alberigo, the person right after Ugolino, his body is still animated on Earth, being inhabited by a demon while his soul is down here. It's like categories of human are collapsed. And so with Satan, he's just, if you think about the magnificence that he was created to be, the highest of all the angels, that now he's essentially one with the landscape of hell. He has no agency. He's not verbal. He's lost everything that God gave him when he was made.
And he's a travesty of the Trinity with the three heads. It's just a complete opposite of what he was created to be. Now, you mentioned the fellow who's still alive, but he's in hell. This has got Dante playing with orthodoxy big time. If you got the Hail Mary pass possibility to the end, what he's saying is you can be such a low down traitor that you are damned and still walking around.
Yes.
And you're in hell. That's a little dicey, but it does come back. This is something John, I think, and I were raising with Brunetto and John Ruff as well. Is it possible for souls to repent in hell? And you were very unsentimental and clear, no. In this theological vision, no. And here we have a person who still has a body form, in possession of a body form, who's now so possessed that even an exorcism doesn't seem possible. I don't know what to say except that this is pretty unorthodox and pretty bleak. Anybody want to say something about this? It bugs me. It bugs me to this day. It's bugged me since I first read Dante. Does it bug you, Catherine? It has to.
It does. I think that it really complicates the theology of the body, which Dante.
There it is. Yes. And this is where, if you guys read ahead, and I think somebody asked about that whole thing about the embryonic development. Okay, here's a recommendation. And I must have spent an hour reading his footnote on that canto. And I finally kind of understand it. It's very detailed, but it explains why Dante is not an Averroes. Okay, the Averroes would have taken Aristotle and said, well, the soul finally disappears from or goes away from the body and joins a kind of universal soul. For Dante, no, the soul is integrally connected to the body. And that's why these people seem so individual. True, what you said, they're losing that personhood, that particularity by the pit of hell. But that soul-body connection is so important. And thus we go to purgatory, where people are shocked that he has a shadow because he's got his body and they just have a spirit. And to race over better waters, I'm on page 160. I'm racing indeed. My ship of mind alive again hoist sail and leave behind its little keel, the gulf that proved so cruel. Notice the poet, the translator is using iambic pentameter here. He often uses alliteration. I'll sing now about that second realm where human spirits purge themselves from stain, becoming worthy to ascend to heaven. He calls on Calliope, there's the Egyptian gold, one of the muses. He notes that there are 4 stars up in the sky. That means dawn is coming. 4 stars stand for the 4 cardinal virtues. Even pagans can have fortitude and temperance and justice and prudence. But when night comes, 3 stars, the theological virtues, faith, hope, and love. They're the ones that shine in the sky. And Virgil is always saying that he doesn't have access to those, although I will note in quick passing that on page 169, Canto 3, he talks a very good game regarding the 2 pillars of the Christian faith, the Trinity, in which he says, don't try with your rational mind to understand the one true being in 3 persons takes, line 36, and the incarnation. Had you been able to see everything, Mary need not have labored to give birth. But we'll go back to Virgil another time. Let's continue with Canto 1. The guardian, here's another flip, is Cato. Who's Cato? Cato's a suicide, 1. Cato's a pagan, 2. And why did he commit suicide? Because Julius Caesar made himself emperor, and in the name of liberty, he kills himself. What's going on here? Does anybody have any explanation, aside from Catherine, about what's going on here? He's white-haired. He's grouchy as heck, too. I mean, I don't know. It seems to me he's got some purging to do up in the circle of the wrathful. What are you guys doing? What are you doing here? Why are you singing? Why are you doing poems? But who's Cato? And somebody said a very profound thing in class the other day that I'd never thought of. But why Cato? Sam, what does he stand for? You're a good classicist.
Well, he's a famous Roman moralist, for one, and I think also because he stands up to Caesar, Dante views him as I don't know. I'm a little perplexed by Cato's appearance here as well.
Especially because Brutus and Cassius are in the mouth of Satan. They stood up to Caesar too, and they did it, and they didn't kill themselves. So it's complicated. But what somebody observed in class is, and it's often observed, he stood in the name of liberty, and he sacrificed himself. Okay, if we say the suicide was a self-sacrifice in the name of liberty, he said that's like Jesus. And in fact, in the Convivio, Cato, he compares Cato to the divine. I mean, this is another work of Dante's, and Cato becomes a kind of Christ figure who, through sacrifice, offers us liberty. The name of the game in Purgatory is freedom. It may seem like an imprisonment, a punishment, but it's one long path of spiritual therapy, a strenuous spa in which people, there's pain, there's gain. Well, let's move past this and let's get to the passage that I promised Bonnie she would read. The dawn is coming. He sees a swift light coming across the water, and Virgil right away knows who it is. It's an angel, and he's always wanting to show respect to angels. He needs no oar. And in the boat, he sees a group of people. Pick it up where I asked you to, Bonnie, and just read. We're on page 165. Tell us what line we should look at.
Oh, wait. Are we on 94?
On 94? Yeah. Let's see. What did I ask you to read? 94?
94 to 133.
94 to 133. What was I thinking? Was I completely perplexed and mixed up when I asked you to prepare that? Can I scratch that completely and ask you to improvise and instead pick it up with line 40? Okay. I bet my eyes he reached the shore. Pick it up from there.
I bent my eyes. He reached the shore, his boat so swift, so quick, so light, so elegant, no wave could swallow any part of it. Celestial at the stern, the pilot stood, beatitude, it seemed, inscribed on him, and ranged within 100 spirits more. Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah. Okay. In Israel, Israel left Egypt, right? That's the
Okay,
Psalm
right.
114. They're all singing this together. Good.
Okay, they sang this all together in one voice with all the psalms that's written after this. Then over them he made the holy cross, at which they flung themselves upon the shore. And he, as fast as he had come, went off. The crowd that now remained, it seemed, was strange, astray there, wondering, looking all around, as people do, assessing what is new.
Okay, stop there. All I ask you to do is remember, if you wanted to go to page 15 and look at it again, what a difference in this arrival. Yes, they fling themselves forward, like the souls on Karen's boat do, but here they're singing together. There, they're cursing their parents, their own birth, and they're singing a song of freedom. That song, that Psalm 114 that Dante wants us to keep as an example in reading his own poem. One of the souls, they're all kind of lost, is Casella, Dante's own friend. They start singing a poem, and Cato comes and says, "Get going. What is this neglect? Go run towards the mountain, shed that skin." Okay, I want somebody to answer this question. We've already done Buonconte in Canto 5. Anti-Purgatory basically goes through Purgatory 8. What I want you to do is go to Purgatory 9, Canto 9, after we're skipping a lot of good stuff, but in Canto 9, we have Dante falling asleep, dreaming of an eagle that carries him. We learn that he's being carried by Lucia. I remember when I had an eye operation a few years ago, Catherine kindly said a prayer to Santa Lucia because she's the patron saint of eyes, and she's really important to Dante as a kind of patron. And now he's at the very beginning of Purgatory. Okay, and he addresses the reader. Let me pick it up on page 199, line 70. "You, reader, can now see how I here raise the theme my verse attempts. Don't marvel then, if with more craft and art I strengthen it. We now drew closer, and were in that part where first I had thought a breach appeared, as might some fissure that divides a wall. And now I saw a gate leading there, 3 steps beneath, each colored differently. And at that gate a guardian who spoke no word. As I opened my eyes to this, I saw him sitting on the highest stair. His face was such as I could not bear the light. He held a sword. He asks who he is. Virgil says he comes because he's been guided by heaven. And the guardian, courteous, asks him to step forward. He points out that the stairs are colored. One is white, the first one. The second one is more dark than purse, a kind of rough purplish color. And the final step, the third, is red, porphyry. And it flamed as bright as fresh blood spurting from a severed vein. There's also 2 keys, the golden key, I can forgive sin. The silver key, I have the deftness to move a heart of stone toward confession. Let's go to the stairs, though, and I want to ask this question. And I suspect most of you are not Catholic, and so are going to have some challenging questions to ask. The white step is confession. I come clean with whomever I offended. The purplish step is contrition. It's kind of difficult. They go together, but it's difficult to come to grips with my own responsibility for what I've done. The red step is penance, or satisfaction by works. All of these people have work to do. The proud, first terrace we come to, are bent down under large rocks, and they're praying and they're singing, but it hurts. It hurts. It's penance. Can somebody perhaps explain what that red step and why? Well, let me just come to the point. Didn't Jesus take care of all this? Didn't his red blood spilled on Mount Calvary take care of our stain of sin? Aren't we washed in the blood of the Lamb? And if so, why do we need purgatory? In Dante's vision, what's the point of it? Good. I see Kimberly Johnson nodding, like, yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. Let's get the good. Now we're not anti-A-N-T-E, A-N-T-I, Purgatorio. Voice for, what the heck is this? Kimberly, put your mic on and talk to us. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I thought this was very interesting. I was talking with my son who was in your classes. His name is Alec Ferguson. And
Oh, yes, Alex, yes.
yes. So, because, I was raised a Lutheran, so
Oh, yeah, they got rid of purgatory.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I'm now an Episcopalian, so
You're
I'm
inching closer.
Okay. Yes, Anglo-Catholic tradition. So, and I might say I really love the fact that we were reading Purgatory for Ash Wednesday. It was like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I came to decide that sometimes, some of us might not really appreciate, how badly we kind of muffed things up while we were alive. And that this gives us the ability to truly, truly, truly understand if we didn't quite get the message while we were alive. Like we partially got it, but not truly in our heart of hearts. And maybe we didn't, get the message when we attended Ash Wednesday services to understand how, what happens when you're wrathful, what that really, really means. It's a very powerful, like, oh, that means me too. Wow, I didn't realize that, if I have that, some kind of animus towards someone from some time ago and I still can't kind of get over it
Right.
later, wow, that's something.
It's hurt me somehow. It's stained me somehow. I have a kind of a wound or something that, and maybe what you're suggesting is after death, I might see that more clearly and say, God, I really got a little bit more cleaning up to do.
Yes.
So then the question becomes, is this the desire of the souls to actually be in this, let's call it a place? It's really a spiritual condition in which I wish to do penance, contrition. Pierce, you wanted to say something? I think
John?
you had a hand up. No? Did I hallucinate? Okay, hold on, John. Did somebody have a hand up a moment ago? No. Okay, John, please. Yes.
So one of the things is that I grew up in Church of Christ. I'm washed in the blood of the Lamb.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like that individual salvation thing. And what happens in purgatory is something very, very different. Now suddenly in purgatory we enter the communion of saints. I pray for you. You're praying for me. If I'm lost by myself. But if I'm saved in this great communion of saints that we're all bound in this salvation process together.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why purgatory exists, to bind us back together again, to purge us from our selfishness and our evil desires, and to purify our love so that we can love each other properly.
Okay, so you're hitting on something important. And does Dante's Purgatory strike you as communal?
Yes.
Of course it does. Yes. I mean, they're singing when they get off the boat. The envious, who used to be at each other's odds, they're leaning against each other. Okay. They're praying for each other. They're asking people courteously for prayers. Michelle, please, your turn.
I would just say I was raised Catholic, and as a little kid, it was very funny because purgatory always seemed like a waiting room. Like you didn't want to be there. I was like, oh, why can't you go right to heaven? But then as you would go some of the sacraments and you do like ask for forgiveness and you'd be giving a penance, for your confessions, there was a thinking that like not, I wouldn't want to say earning it, but you have to participate in your redemption.
Okay.
You have to be active. And I know we're going to talk about purgatory, but someone earlier made a point I really loved in the chat about Dante, when he gets to like the terrace of lust, really feels like he becomes an active like protagonist that we're following. Like he's sort of just been guiding along, going place to place. But then when he's like in the fire, about the fire and Beatrice, he like makes a choice. It feels like he is like choosing to participate in his own redemption.
That's a key word. Michelle's word participation is going to be really important throughout. I just happened to notice in the text in the chat, Megan, who I'm going to call on very soon to read two passages, not only a passage that I asked her to read, but a different one from Canto 23. That idea of participation is going to be really important. But somebody else had a hand up. Pierce, yes.
I keep coming in and out. Along the same lines, the idea that I think the whole like comparison to being washed in the blood of the lamb, aren't your sins forgiven? It's sort of the wrong comparison because yes, like even in places here, like Dante affirms sins are forgiven in Christ, but
Yeah.
purgatory is about purification, right? It's about like having all of this drawn out of you. And in that, I think the Protestant idea kind of is sanctification would be the corollary.
Yeah, that's the corollary.
But it just doesn't happen after this life in Protestant theology.
Okay, right. It wouldn't happen after death, right? It does disappear. But that's where I think, again, the Lenten connection, if the Lenten task is one of sanctification, we're justified by the blood of the Lamb, by Christ. And, John Ruff and I, many, many years ago, were both teaching in Valparaiso and in dialogues with Lutherans about understanding justification and sanctification. And I am so grateful for that whole education. But here it's a task of purification, sanctification. And I want to ask Suzanne what she's thinking. Yes.
From when I was reading it, and particularly going into Canto 11, it's I'm not worthy, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make it my own. So I'm still not going to be worthy because I haven't truly accepted the gift. Like I found it very. You were using the Lenten journey. I see purgatory as the earthly journey.
Yeah, that the whole earthly journey. Yeah, that's even the better thing. I mean, it doesn't stop at Lent, right? It's the whole earthly journey is one of sanctification. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your cue and go to Canto 11, and then I'm going to ask, where are you, Megan? Raise your hand so you come up to the very top. You see, if you raise your hand, you just rise to the top of all the people that are here. There you are. Hello again. What I wanted you to attend to before we go to the canto that Megan will read is the way they pray the Our Father. This is the terrace of the proud. They're bent beneath the stones, and they pray the Our Father. And they, well, why don't I just read it, and then I can ask you what strikes you in this revision of the Our Father. Our Father, we're on page 207, Canto 11. Our Father, dwelling in the heavenly spheres, not circumscribed by these, but through that love which you bear more on high to primal things, your name and all the prowess of your might be praised by every creature. It is fit to pay all thanks to your sweet forming power. May peace, as in your realm, come down to us, for we ourselves cannot attain to that. If come, it doesn't, not with all our wit. As all your angels make a sacrifice, singing Hosanna of their wills to you, so may men make sacrifice with theirs. I'll stop there. Sacrifice is, I think, key to how they understand this third step that's marked by the red step, in which they want to give something freely of themselves. Matt Finley will soon be reading Marco Lombardo about free will being just vital to what it means to be a human. And if I can riff just a little bit longer, it's a bit like what C.S. Lewis says. Now, oddly, C.S. Lewis believed in purgatory. And he writes this, and I'm just going to read this little passage, which I think captures some of what was said up to this point. Our souls demand purgatory, don't they? Would it not break the heart if God said to us, "It is true, my son, that your breath smells, your rags drip with mud and slime, but we're charitable here, and no one will upbraid you with these things, nor draw away from you. Enter into the joy." But should we not reply, With submission, sir, and if there's no objection, I'd rather be cleaned first. And God says, it may hurt, you know. Even so, sir. And then Lewis continues, I assume that the process of purification will normally involve suffering, partly from tradition, partly because most real good that has been done me in this life involves suffering. But I don't think suffering is the purpose of the purgation. I can well believe that people neither more worse nor much better than I will suffer less than I or more. Not any nonsense about merit, has nothing to do with that. That treatment, the treatment given will be the one that is required, whether it hurts little or much. And this is his image. My favorite image on the matter of purgatory comes from the dentist chair. I hope that when the tooth of life is drawn and I am coming around, a voice will say, okay, rinse your mouth out with this. This will be purgatory. And so freely, there's a sense in which the soul wants it. And then in this passage that Megan is going to read, what canto is that, Megan? Statius.
21.
Yeah, 21. So they've met this guy. Let's just situate this. But he's going to be surprised because his will feels free. I mean, it's not like he's got to do this many centuries or else. People's prayers can lessen the time. But you know in your own will, in your own conscience, when you have done what you need to do. And Statius, who's a poet like Virgil, in fact, he tells him, Virgil, that I became a poet and a Christian because of you, explains why the earth has just quaked. So pick it up on line, I think we said 40. Is that right, Megan?
Yeah. Canto 21, line 40.
Yeah, Canto 21, line 40, page 257. So he's explaining why the earth just shook and his own experience. Go ahead.
There's nothing that this mountain's holy law consents to that's lacking order or irregular. This place is free from every kind of change. Only what heaven of itself receives can act here as a cause and nothing else. Therefore, no showers of rain, nor hail or snow, no dew or hoarfrost ever falls above that little stairway with its 3 brief steps. No clouds here, whether rare or dense, appear. No glint of lightning, nor the rainbow child of Themis. They're so often changing place. In dry evaporations do not rise beyond the 3rd and highest of those steps. I spoke of them where Peter's vicar stands. Tremors occur below, some small perhaps, some great. At these heights, though, no tremor comes. From winds that hide, I can't tell why, in earth. Tremors strike here when any soul feels pure and rises, newly cleansed, to start its climb. And that cry follows as the soul ascends. The will alone gives proof of purity when, wholly free to change its sacred place, it aids and sweeps the soul up, willing well. The soul till then indeed had will descent, but set against that will there is the bent, which God instills for pain as sin's equivalent. And I, who've lain 500 years and more in that same pain, have only felt just now the freedom of the better way ahead. That's why you felt and heard those tremors here, and spirits round the mountain rendering praise, so God, our Lord, might send them higher soon.
Thank you. Beautiful. Does that help? In Suzanne, like you had commented about kind of, and I think where is the other person who had spoken about kind of saying, wait, I still got something else to do. Yeah, Kimberly, does this get at that a little bit? And if so, where so? Where do you hear him saying something that speaks to what you're getting at?
Yeah, I feel, you know, I know. So, well, let me go back to, actually, can I just stop and say something else? Something
Yeah,
just
yeah.
about the porphyry rock, because I'm
The
actually
red
taking,
rock. Yes, yes.
yes. So I'm also just taking this early Christian and Byzantine art history class. And historically, the porphyry rock was actually used for the statues and artwork to depict the Augustus and the tetrarchs. And so I was also reading, the porphyry, the significance of that to be, this really, this is the top, this is the kingdom of
Yeah.
heaven,
Yeah.
um, in my reading of it. So that's why that really was meaningful to me, with the significance of the calling of that out. I mean, in addition to what you were saying earlier, but
Good. No, that's wonderful. I mean, and it's the color of love. Green comes up a lot. That's the color of hope. Everyone has hope in purgatory. Everyone really, they know where they're heading. They're heading home. Statius now knows with a conviction in his own heart that, my will is free. I've done all that I need to do.
right.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so, what I guess what to go back to your question of me, I guess I would say like around line 58. And I'm so sorry, I have a slightly different
So that's
version.
okay. That's okay.
And so right, and so it's so basically it says I below that point there may be a small or ample tremor, so let's line 55. But here above I know not why, no wind concealed in earth has ever caused a tremor, for it only trembles here when some soul feels it's cleansed, so that
Yes.
it rises or stirs to climb on high, and that shout follows. So to me it's like, yes, I know that finally I have done the work I needed to do
Yeah. Yeah.
to truly, honestly say that I have repented.
And he knows it. He's making the decision. It's his free will. Now I want
Right.
to go to Suzanne's point about, I think it was your point about participation. And here, Megan, if you could turn to Canto 23. Now we're with the gluttonous who are fasting, and he sees his friend Ferese Donati, who he used to be in poetic competition with, and he's wondering how he got there so fast. And Ferese says, well, my good Nella prayed for me. That's coming up later around line 85. But I'd like you to look at page 266. The souls are very gaunt. You can see OMO in the face of each of them because they're fasting. This luscious fruit that hangs from the tree is there. They can smell it, but they can't eat it. They're fasting. And I will be Dante, Megan, and I want you to be Ferese. You're going to pick it up on line 61. I'll start on line 55. And how does that idea of participation take form here? That's going to be my question. That face of yours, Ferese, that I wept for once in death, now gives me as painfully a cause to weep, seeing it here so wrenched away. But tell me, in God's name, what strips your leaves? Don't make me wonderstruck, attempt to talk. No one desiring other things speaks well.
There falls from the eternal mind a virtue in that water and that tree, back there, which sharpens me and pares me down. And all these people, weeping as they sing, because their gullets led them past all norms, are here remade as holy, thirsting, hungering. Cravings to eat and drink are fired in us by perfumes, that fruit, and from the spray that spreads and fans above the greenery. Nor once alone, encircling round the space, is agony and pain refreshed in us. I call it pain, rightly I should say solace. For that same yearning leads us to that tree that led Christ in his joy to say Eli, when through his open veins he made us free.
Okay, stop there. What is Ferese saying about, he's still feeling the pain of fasting. But what does he say about his pain that helps us to understand that porphyry red step of love that is an act of penance? What does he say? Suzanne, do you hear participation there?
I do.
Where?
I mean, I see it as like, I hate to use like Christ because I don't really like that phrase, but I'm going to say like Christ, if you will all allow me that. Like uh, there's a participation in this sort of sacred suffering and the blood shed, the redness of the blood that was shed and sacrificed and crucified. That's kind of what came to my mind.
Well,
But
it's right in the text, Suzanne. I mean, you're not imagining this. I mean, who says Eli, 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 lama sabachthani? My God, why have you
why have
forsaken
you
me?
forsaken me? Right.
We heard an echo in Ugolino a while back, the little children. This is Jesus opening his veins to make us free. We're washed in the blood of the Lamb. But he's saying, interestingly, that he cried out in joy when he said that. Now, if you read the whole psalm, you might be able to understand that. He's completing his Father's will, his calling. But he says, Ferezi says that my pain, too, should rightly be called solace. It's the same yearning that leads us to this tree that led Christ to his tree. I mean, is that you were cautious about saying this is like Christ? Is it because you're wary of a kind of presumption?
Oh no, not the presumption, but sort of the pridefulness of saying something like Christ, but
Right.
it is like Christ in the earth in our own earthly journey too. The whatever that pain or that suffering is. So that's kind of thinking of it. But when you were also speaking, something else came to my mind right before we started reading the text, and it was Job, and it was the
Oh,
prayers. Um,
yeah.
and you know how Job is complaining and he's going to all his friends, and there is this sort of, everybody's giving him advice, and then God is like, and then sort of that realization. And I think to me, that's what I kind of see too playing out is the story of Job and Christ's story of redemption on the cross. I don't know. I found it all fascinating, but that's kind of how my brain
Okay.
works.
Okay, good. You're making connections. Somebody raised your hand. Those two passages, the Statius passage and the Ferezi passage. Anything else that you noticed in those readings that Megan gave us that you want to highlight? Well, then I'll say this. We have 20 minutes left, and my hope is that we can begin to go up the terraces. Clearly, we are not going to cover every deadly sin in 20 minutes. I hope that these readings, and Matt Finley, where may you be? Where are you? Are you there? Are you still with us, Matt? Have you given up on us?
Yes, I'm here. Hold on, let me
Here he
raise
is.
my hand.
Matt,
Okay.
give us in
All
your
right.
own words. What does Marco Lombardo say in that canto that I had asked you to read? Yeah, just give us. Go back to Canto 16. Dante wants to know, where does all this suffering come from? It's kind of Job's question in a way. Why are we suffering so much? Why is there so much pain? Is it because of the stars? What is it? What does Marco Lombardo have to say about this?
You want me to read or you want me to answer your question?
I want you to answer. You're a teacher.
Okay.
You know how to think on your feet.
Yeah, I think he says a couple of things. I mean, he says, that you are responsible, that you have free will and that you choose. But ultimately, Marco seems to take much greater issue with perverted government.
Yeah, he does.
That
Goes into that. Yes.
yeah, that people don't have, good shepherds, right, to guide them and to enforce law as it should be enforced.
Good. Okay, the reason lies in you, and you had sought. There's line 82.
Right, that's the responsibility.
All of that. It's going to be developed again in Canto 17 by Virgil. Virgil's going to say love motivates everything you do. I mean, a misdirected love of self can lead to envy. I want to be the one noticed. It can obviously lead to pride. Wrath can be motivated by a overweening desire for my sense of justice. Love can be lax, he says. That's acedia. We'll talk about that next time we meet. I'm not ending yet. And then love excessive, avarice, gluttony, and lust. But let's go back to the structural sin of government. On page 234, and this is important, those of you who know more about Dante may know that he wrote a book called De Monarchia. He said there's two sons. There's the empire or the emperor, and there's the pope. And the emperor is the one who should be doing the political work and enforcing the laws. The pope is there for spiritual guidance. But now, once Rome, which made this world for us pure gold, this is line 106, had two suns in its sky, and these made known both roads to take, the world's and that of God. One sun has snuffed the other out. The sword is joined to the shepherd's crook. This is his complaint about the papacy. As fierce, I think, as anything Luther would have protested against the papacy 200 years later. He wants reform. He wants structural reform. And he yearns for the emperor who's going to bring it about. While he's writing this, the papacy moves to France, Avignon, Babylonian captivity of the papacy, and things do not get better in that way before Dante dies. But maybe at this point, I realize about 6 pages from the chat, and there's no way I can peruse these as quickly as I thought were within my powers. John Druff knows this too. So what I'm going to do is this. Who posted on the first terrace the sin of pride? Because I'd like to know, either on a personal individual level or on this maybe structural level, where we see these sins in our own situations, our own contemporary situation, and what Dante may have to offer us as a way out. You see? Here we are reading him 750 years later. I might be inspired, for example, to go to the gym and do some back exercises when I see these proud people like Umberto bearing these stones and talking about the virtue of humility, imaged by Mary when she says, "Here I am, the handmaiden of the Lord." I'm looking at Canto 10, Canto 11. So, and Canto 12, where they get warnings of pride, like the Tower of Babel, and a whole array of them on page 213. So again, raise your hand if you posted in your chat box on pride. Okay, Suzanne, let's see what other hands. She can't be the only one. This is the capital sin. She can't be the only proud person. Are you going to confess your pride? Well, humbly, others will join you. Right, Luke? What did you post on, Luke? I haven't heard a word yet. Luke. Oh, good. Reese, did you post? Oh, good. The hands are coming up. Reese and Suzanne. Reese, we haven't heard from you yet. So tell us, why did you choose pride? What did you have to say about it? And how does Dante give us insight into this sin?
Yeah, this is Reese. Oh my gosh. Well, pride is focusing on the individual, right? On oneself, and whatever that might be, like you said, going to the gym or our, things we accomplish. And here we find that those that have focused on pride are carrying these big stones on their backs, and they're forced to look down.
They're forced to look down. Yeah.
Forced to look down and find that humility. And it just kind of, I don't know, gave me something to think about as far as, the focus shifted from oneself to others. And it was kind of like this communal, hey, we're all kind of suffering or journeying on this together.
And these are the guys all singing the Our Father, and the men and the women singing the Our Father together too, in unison. Good. Suzanne, how about you? What was your insight here?
Well, actually, it really went back to Our Father. And when one says that prayer, or when I say that prayer, sometimes I might want a particular outcome, and this may not be God's will. And I was asked actually by my loving brother one time, how do you say that prayer, like in a particular moment? And it wasn't, and it really is about like forgiveness of self, of things, and forgiveness of others. But then just in saying that prayer, sometimes it becomes very rote, right? And you're not really like, no, God's will be
Thy
done.
will be done. Yeah.
Thy will be done, and not necessarily what I want as the outcome.
Yeah. And interesting, just return for a second back to Reese's point, we're making this prayer, lead us not into temptation, not for ourselves, because we're not tempted anymore. They can't be, but for everybody else back on earth. So they're praying for us too. There's the communal dimension. Luke, how about you? What are you going to say?
I did actually, I didn't post anything, but this was the one that I found most interesting as well. And my thought is also connected to the Our Father, and specifically that in the traditional Our Father, we ask for these things: Your kingdom come, Your will be done, and it's implied that God is the one to bring this about. And in Dante's adjustment of it, it's very explicit. This is not by our power. Nothing is outside of your power, God. You're the only one who's going to bring this about. Like, there's a very intentional ascribing to God of the power and his ability to bring these things about that they're praying for.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that, Luke. I knew you'd come through. For we ourselves cannot attain to that. May peace, as in your realm, come down to us. And yet they're saying, like the angels offer sacrifice by saying Hosanna, we're now offering our sacrifice. And I think, and this is the paradox of grace and free will and grace and what human beings are capable of. Grace always comes first. Grace moves them to want to carry those stones and to pray for the people that they're praying for. And I think that arguably you see that throughout Dante. I'll make a grand statement here that I don't think you can ever accuse him of Pelagianism. Catherine, tell me if I'm wrong. Pelagianism is the heresy that says I can do it all by myself. And then maybe if I'm really good, I'll earn grace. Just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down or one of these. Oh, okay. All right, good. I'll get that. But here comes...
I agree. Yes, I agree with you.
You agree. Here comes Lorna. Lorna, what would you like to say? Get that microphone on. There we go.
I just wanted to add, I agree with everybody else. I was thinking about that one phrase in Canto 12, lines 110 to 111, where as he leaves the terrace of pride, Dante hears voices saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit."
Yes, good.
I was thinking of the beatitude of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, the first one.
Yeah.
And how to be poor in spirit is to recognize the need for us for God. And it's the opposite of self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
That was sort of, that
beautiful.
stood out to me.
Thank you so much. I love when people pick out these details. Kobe?
Yeah, Paul, I was just going to say, to your point about Pelagianism and grace coming first, it is always remarkable to me to think, like, going all the way back to the beginning, right? Like, Dante can't get himself out of the woods.
Yeah.
Right? He's just in trouble. And before he knows where to go at all, right? It's like the same love that has moved the stars in the heavens has moved through the three ladies, through Virgil, to come rescue him out of the woods. So it's like from the jump. And
the grace is mediated, almost like a telephone. Well, you play the game of telephone, one to the other to the other, but all those people get involved. Yeah, it's a team effort. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the community is mediating grace throughout. Beautiful. Others on pride. Any details in those cantos 10, 11, and 12? If you'll notice, Dante is bending down with them. And later, when he gets to the terrace of the envious, he says something like, "I don't think I'll spend too much time on this terrace, but down below, plenty." He knows himself. He knows he's the kind of poet that inspires the reader to sometimes say, "Who does this guy think he is?" And if you don't say that, you're not reading carefully enough. Others on pride. Any details intend to... Catherine, did we miss something good?
There's one thing that I just love about the poetry of, especially it's in 12, just the visual artwork in 12.
This is so important. Look at this, friends. Yes.
Yes, I'm looking just around, gosh, like in the 50s, 60s. It's all these descriptions of sort
Yeah.
of really significant characters, illustrations artistically, renderings of people who have been prideful and were cast down. And
Oh, look at this.
we
Look
had
at this. Think of
somebody escaped from
humility.
bed.
There's the image of humility. What is this one's name?
This is Henry.
That's Henry.
Yes.
We pray for him at night. Look at that.
Thank
Little
you.
Henry. Could we just see him for a second?
Yes.
Yes. Hello, beautiful. Oh, there it is. God bless you, Henry. We should know Catherine is raising money. Can you say something? Could you just say a word about that in all humility? I really want to ask you to say something about that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So my story, if people are wondering why I talk so much about Dante, I spent my life devoted to Dante in academia. And then it was just right at the end of a PhD at UCLA in Comp Lit studying Dante. And then my 5-year-old was diagnosed with a neurodegenerative disease. And this is my middle son. George is the one who is sick, and this is Henry.
Yeah.
But
This is
he,
Henry. Yes.
yeah,
George.
so I had to withdraw from this PhD program at the very end, and then now I'm working full time on advancing this drug for my son. So that is my story.
And you can learn more about this, and I think it's, this is all a community effort. We're a little community. If you go to Catherine's Facebook page, you can learn more about this, and it's very important work.
Thank you.
That you're doing.
It's turned into a big effort because I realized that we have the technology to cure genetic disease for children, and you need $6 million per trial, and we have 20,000 genes in the genome. And this is actually Pope Leo has devoted this month of February to his prayer intention is for children with incurable diseases.
Really?
And this is like a very charged Lenten period for this issue, like worldwide, for advancing genetic medicine for children. And I have a new foundation and a for-profit company I've set up. There's a lot. So you can look on my social media if you want to learn more about it. But thank you for giving me time to air that.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad. And now to go back to the poem, of course. Yes. On page 213, you see what the poet tried to do. He spells out man, M, mark, and then now. In the Italian, it's what is it, Catherine? Uomo or again, spells man in Italian.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So it's an acrostic
poem, yes.
It's an acrostic. And he's getting at the point that, human beings, you're so full of yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And can you please get out of yourselves?
Mm-hmm.
I want to bring this to closure by just trying to say a few words about where I'd like to go next time and some things that might be able to help us. We're only at the beginning. This is pride. It's the worst of all the sins. I don't know if some of you know a book by a woman who teaches at Calvin College called Glittering Vices. I work with the Lilly graduate fellows, and we read this. So if you're one of those people, I don't want you to be avaricious and buy a lot of books from Amazon, but I recommend this one, and I'll probably draw on it when we go back into the 7 deadly sins. This is, of course, the poor man's PowerPoint. It's just called Glittering Vices. There's an apple. It explains where this idea came from in the Christian tradition and how it's relevant now and the counteracting virtues. Another book I wanted to show you. I love showing people books. This is a person who teaches at Wheaton. Okay, these are all Protestant writers. Dante, The Way of Dante by Richard Hughes Gibson. And at the end, he's got a beautiful meditation by a woman named Nicole Mazzarella about the 7 terraces and how they can invite self-reflection. Okay, not only the sin itself and the penance, but more importantly, the virtue that's represented, first in Mary, but then in others like David, others. This is a book that explores going through hell, purgatory, and heaven with C.S. Lewis, Dorothy Sayers, and Charles Williams. I know some of you are big fans of those people. If you want to do a little extra reading before the March meeting, take a look at that. But I say all this because I want us to do more thinking. I think what I'll do is from March, make the reading in Paradiso minimal, okay? And finish Purgatory. We'll get to the scene where Beatrice meets Dante and Dante makes a confession. because he still hasn't confessed. He might be participating in the penance, and he goes through the flames, but he hasn't confessed yet. And we'll get a taste of paradise, the first 5 cantos maybe. But Pope Leo, who Catherine was just talking about, gave a sermon just yesterday on Ash Wednesday, and I can send you a copy of this. I'll send this to Chad, who'll send you a copy, and I can send you those book recommendations too, where he says that, people in modern day, the idea of repentance is that people are kind of allergic to that. There's a reluctance to embrace penitence. And he quotes Paul VI at one point, but I'd like you to take a look at this sermon, which says, we participate through penance in the passage from death to life, from powerlessness to the possibilities of God. My question is this: if you didn't post on the chat, can you send me an email of one terrace and sin and virtue that you'd be interested in exploring? And maybe, and the key question is this: how does the way Dante describe, how is the way Dante describes the terrace relevant to our contemporary social situation? And then if you want to get personal, I think it's always good to think of yourself, because it's so easy to say, well, this is the way society is, and this is the way structures are. And Dante acknowledges the reality of that, and Leo does too. When he talks about the ashes, for example, he says that the ashes that we put on our heads remind us of entire cities destroyed by war, the ashes of international law and justice among peoples. You can let your imaginations, go where they will there. What I'm inviting is a kind of self-reflection on one terrace that especially speaks to you and in which you think Dante is really speaking to our time in some way. And the gift will be in the details, pointing to a particular verse in a particular canto that you'd like to explore. So we'll begin with where we left off, pride. We'll go to the rest, and then we'll look at the encounter with Beatrice and read the first 5 or 6 cantos of Paradiso, maybe the first 7 cantos of Paradiso. Does this sound like a reasonable request for the next month? Okay, that's all I need to know. And now it's late. For some of you, it's very late. So I will say adieu. Are there any last words that anybody has to say before we depart, except goodbye? Okay, turn your microphones on and say goodbye. We're like a community in purgatory, all with all our... Turn your mics on. Let's hear it.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, everybody.
See you later.
Bye.